Town Meeting, Town Manager Acts Review Committee. And we are here at the Daniel J. Toomey Hearing Room in Town Hall. Thank you all for being here. I've handed out to John Jaworski and who else? Natalie, the handouts from our last meeting on May 7th. And I left at each spot handouts for today. We start with the minutes of our May 7 meeting. And I emailed them out, but not too long ago. Does anybody have any comments or questions, corrections to these minutes? You'll see that I did attach the statement that we received from former Selectman Peter Zook, dated March 29, 25, with his comments. And I know that at our last meeting, there was a question about attaching other correspondence and emails we've received from people. And I wanted to show you the folder that I have. It's email and correspondence. A lot of it has to do with scheduling meetings. But I will go through these and the ones that create a record of any substance of what we've done. I will make sure are included in the records of this committee's work when I assemble them, probably sometime next month. So I just wanted to show why it was maybe a bigger task than you might have imagined. Okay, any questions about the May 7th meetings? Do I hear a motion?
I move to accept the minutes from May 7th.
I'll second that.
Who is that? Who is this?
John.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll abstain, having not been here.
Me too.
So that gives us a vote of 7-0 with 2 abstain. Thank you. So I was wondering, tonight is our last scheduled meeting, and I was thinking, how do we deal with the minutes of tonight's meeting? And so I came to Town Hall the other day and talked with Ann Freitas about it, who consulted with Jen Breaker, the Assistant Town Manager, about it. And the response is that Jen Breaker said that this committee could authorize the chair to approve the final minutes. So if you were so inclined to do so, I think that would require a vote from tonight. I was going to say that my plan, and I have a note to myself to do this, is that the minutes for today's meeting, the May 14th meeting, I was going to attach to it a copy of our final report and the redlined acts, the Town Meeting Act and the Town Manager Act, so that the minutes of our final meeting as entered into the town record, which is the page that you go to look up agenda and minutes of various committees, will include all of that stuff. So that was my thought, that we'd have our minutes as normal, as usual, but with those hefty attachments. So any thoughts about that issue, the minutes of our tonight's meeting?
Sally, I'm not anticipating a very lengthy, elaborate discussion tonight, so I'd be perfectly fine with that approach of,
We could wait till the end and decide then. We don't have to decide now. It just, do you want to vote on it now, or do you want to wait till the end of the meeting?
I'm fine voting on it now.
I'd second that motion.
Which is, what's the motion?
I would move to authorize Sally to prepare and finalize the minutes of this meeting on behalf of the committee.
Thank you. I really should learn how to write faster.
No.
And Natalie, you seconded that?
Yes, I did.
Any Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. The next matter up is the report itself. And if you look at the last page, I don't remember if the one that I sent you all says it's draft as of 5:10. In fact, there was a change that John Almeida suggested after this went out, which I've now incorporated, which has to do with which meetings were televised. So it's on page 2. And I didn't remember that the July 11 meeting was not televised. And I didn't have a chance to go back and try to look it up, but you're quite certain of that, John?
Yeah, I went and looked at the minutes, and at the July 11th meeting, we discussed asking DCAT to record. And then I looked at the DCAT YouTube page, and the first meeting I saw that was recorded was the subsequent August meeting. So I assume that's how, because I remember having the discussion, should we have the meetings filmed, and we all agreed. I just didn't remember whether that was the pre-meeting or the first meeting.
Yeah.
It was the first meeting.
Okay, thank you. That was the thing I wasn't sure of, too.
Yeah.
So I included that in. So that was the one change since the 5:10 version that I sent everybody. And the red lines here, I eliminated the red lines of the prior draft, so this just shows the things we would have done at our last meeting. Anybody have any questions or comments about these changes?
No, it all looked to me like everything we discussed.
Agreed. I think one of the big changes really had to do with modifying the language to make it clear that we're recommending changes. We're not making changes or voting for changes. We're voting to recommend, because it's only town meeting that can vote to change them. So that was the gist of many of the changes that you'll see here. Do we have a motion? Am I asking this too early? Is there a motion regarding this draft report?
I've read it twice, and I don't have any comments or objections, so I would move to accept the draft as written.
Sally, before we maybe entertain the motion, should we give the two folks who weren't able to be at the last meeting the opportunity, if you had any comments based on the discussion we had at the last meeting?
Yeah, thanks, John, but, no, I'm good. I had reviewed everything, and I thought the changes were appropriate, and I liked the different verb used, recommending instead of, yeah. So I'm good.
John, thank you, and I would second that.
No, don't second anything.
I would agree then.
So the draft as written includes that change about the televising. So though on the back it says draft as of 5:10, I think I actually made that change yesterday, so it would be as of 5:13. So we have a motion to accept the draft.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, so of course, the next thing is, so what happens next? In going back through my notes, I put my hands on some notes from mid-February that I'd forgotten about. I attended a meeting with the then Chair of the Select Board, Dan Bennett, with moderator Pat Frazier, with then Acting Town Manager Rodney Coleman, to talk about the process and what we were doing and, you know, where the process would head, not so much where we, the committee, were heading, but what the process would be. And Dan Bennett indicated that The Select Board's June 3rd meeting is their organizational meeting, where new members join and they elect the chair, and so that's their organizational meeting. And he felt that before then, of course, everybody will be tied up with elections and town meeting, et cetera. Town meeting is this Monday, May 19th. Dan thought, looking at the upcoming agenda, thought that our work, our committee's work, could be on the agenda for June 17th. And that's why you'll see in my kind of covering letter that I just distributed tonight, that I end by, respectfully requesting the Select Board to place this matter on its agenda for June 17th, and that we look forward to meeting with them to discuss. Now, I don't know that that's a date anybody else wrote down. It was a tentative date as we were talking about procedurally how we would move forward, but we had talked before, how will we get this to the next step? And I think by asking that it be placed on a particular agenda would be appropriate. Now, the Select Board could always come back and say, that's not a good night, or let's do something else, or so on, but at least we've made the ask. That was one of the reasons I thought a covering memo would be appropriate. So that's kind of one thing. Ann Freitas has been so helpful and wonderful throughout. My goal is probably tomorrow to drop off to her the final report of our committee without any red lines, et cetera, to drop that off to her. I've already dropped the acts off that we had already approved, so she has all of that. And she was telling me that, I asked if we could email our report and the 2 acts, the red line versions, to the Select Board. And she suggested that that every now and again the town email stuff gets a little mixed up. And she said that she'll be putting a packet together Friday, I'm pretty sure she said Friday, to have delivered to the Select Board for their next meeting, which is next week, I think. So she offered to put our stuff in with that packet. So that's what we're aiming for. So our packet would be the cover memo, our report, the town meeting act with our red line suggestions, and the town manager act with our red line suggestions. And I thought I would ask her to create 20 packets. So there would be the 5 Select Board members, the town moderator, the town manager, Ann, and the 10 of us, with a few extra copies around. And I know you talked about an electronic packet, Mike. I can ask her about that. The tough thing about the electronic packets, and maybe it's just me because I'm not very savvy with technology stuff, is with 2-sided documents, it gets kind of tricky to scan them all in and get them into a, so anyway, if she could give us the 10 packets, I can create an electronic version and send that out.
If we get a hard copy, then we may not need the electronic. I was just trying to think in terms of efficiency.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's kind of where we're heading. How does that sound to everybody?
Sounds good. Sounds good.
So Sally, once the Select Board looks at it and they move it along to FinCom?
Yes, if I would imagine that what the Select Board would do, I mean, when we were talking with, when I was talking with Dan in February, the thought at the time was that this is a big undertaking and a lot for town meeting members to, absorb, et cetera, that it wouldn't be fair to have it at this town meeting coming up Monday night, that it would probably be more appropriate at a special town meeting, which we've discussed. So if the board decides to move forward with the special town meeting, then it would become a warrant article that would go to FinCom, et cetera. So I don't know if it's a given that they'll say, yeah, let's put this at special town meeting, or if there's intervening deliberation by the select board before they make that decision.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how this gets handled. Like, will this just be one warrant article? Will it be warrant articles for different sections, or, I don't know.
Yeah. We can all be thinking about that in case anybody asks what our recommendation would be.
Yeah. I would think, for me, it would just be for like the Town Meeting Act and the Town Manager Act. I don't know that I would break them up into, but I don't know. Because then what do we break out?
Yeah, sections would be too difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it feels
The
like.
two different acts make sense.
Yeah, but I guess we could break it down more.
I'm trying to think, the example that comes to mind, to me, is when we've dealt with zoning matters often at a special town meeting. And I don't recall whether they get broken down or not. If it's like zoning having to do with, say, setback requirements versus zoning which has to do with lot size. I mean, I don't remember if they're broken into two or if they're, I think it's generally one, but I don't
Yeah.
remember. How about, Dan, did you get any impression on that when you guys were doing your historical commission stuff?
With ours, it wound up being parts of 4 different bylaws, so it just worked out that it was 4 different votes on kind of 4 different categories. And that was convenient, because I'm sure people had different opinions on different ones. Yeah, with ours, I don't know, I can kind of see both ways, that if you break it up too much, that's going to be a ton of votes. On the other hand, I can totally see people liking some sections and not some sections, and I suppose they could just amend it on the floor and work out their more distinct opinion that way.
Majority of the changes, in terms of the scope of the changes that we made, were changing things like selectmen to select board and so forth that were carried through the entire document. I could see there being amendments for certain items, such as the a recall vote, that might be subject to an amendment, but I don't think it would be necessary to suggest that we look at each and every section, or consider each section as a vote. I would think it would be the Town Manager Act, Town Meeting Act, and
Would make sense, wouldn't it? Because they're not linked together, and we dealt with them together, one then the other, and we tried to have consistency across the changes we were making, but they are both kind of separate acts, and they've been reviewed at different timeframes in history. Yes, John?
Sally, after the select board looks at it, might they call us back for explanations of certain sections? How would that fit into the process?
Well, I would think, I mean, if, let's say they do put us on their agenda for the date that I asked for, I would think that as many of us as possible would try to attend that meeting to answer any questions that may come up, and also as a show of support for the work we've done. You've already put in so many hours of time. If it's just like one more meeting you just can't do, I certainly understand that, and I'm sure everybody would. But I think if as many of us as can get there to support it and to answer questions, I think that would be wise. And who knows, they may ask us to come at another time to go through them in more detail and explain the rationale behind different changes, et cetera. And again, I will try each time I know of anything to email everybody to let you know when something is happening and so on and so forth. And then if any of you hear anything, feel free to email the group. But, yes, John?
I guess back to the discussion of how it could be dealt with. The recall provisions were a discrete thing that the town meeting referred to us. So it could be Town Meeting Act, Town Manager Act, and recall provisions as separate warrants. And I could see the logic of that as well.
Yeah.
But it is out of our hands, but do we want to discuss it and think about what, if we had a position as a committee?
I mean, that really is the biggest change that we're proposing. I mean, there's issues that are big, but it's the biggest piece of language,
Yeah.
certainly. So it could be carved out separately.
If we don't, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, if we do that, then do we just do the 3 that we've all talked about before? And do we just carve out those 3, the town manager residency, I think was the other one, and then the reduction in town meeting members. So do we take those three as separate warrant articles? Again, I don't know if the select board is going to have an opinion on what they want to do.
I mean, the vote of town meeting last year was to refer the recall provision to us. And we even talked for a while, which act should it be in? So I mean, I could see it being taken up as a separate, you know, separate from the Town Meeting Act, the Town Manager Act. I guess I don't have a feeling one way or another about it. My first thought was, let's just do the two, Town Meeting, Town Manager. But the recall, you know, engendered a lot of passion, and maybe it warrants its own separate status. It was a long time coming. It took them a long time to get it this far.
Yeah.
And I thought it was very interesting, the final language is so very close to what was first proposed by Mr. Traynor. I thought, because we went around and around, and we spent 3 whole meetings talking just about the recall provisions with a little preliminary before we even started that. So it took a lot of our time.
He really did a lot of research beforehand to get it that far. I don't know how different that one was from the year before that he
Yeah, I
tried to do it. I don't know.
either.
I think if we did the recall separate, but with obviously the recommendation to include it within the revised,
Town Manager Act.
right. Because then that way there, if, say, FinCom doesn't like it, and they say, sorry, we don't like this, at least then we don't have to go back completely
With the whole,
to a drawing board of, I mean, we're just it's already, we're asking it to be placed in there, but it's not in there, legally yet, so.
yeah, that's true. It makes sense because it's a section right now in the Town Manager Act.
Right.
And we talked about how the Town Meeting Act really just deals with that body and what happens within town meeting. The Town Manager Act has language that talks about appointed and elected positions and what responsibilities are and so on and so forth. So that's where it belonged. And remember, we talked about putting it in just after the elected official sections. So it would make sense to have the recall separate so that if, for instance, FinCom were to vote no action, there still could be a chance of action on the rest of the changes we're suggesting.
Right.
That's a good point.
Just as a matter of opinion, I hope they don't do that, because that's what they did last time. And it got referred to this committee so that town meeting could finally vote on it. And so if we separate it and then it gets a no action, then I guess we would have to do an amendment on the floor to reinstate, okay. I'll be disappointed
It would be.
if they do it again.
They all worked so hard for it.
Well, I think we set the bar higher than initially. So I'm going to say I'm confident that it seems reasonable.
Good. Well, the other thing I wanted to point out is the 2 acts, the Town Meeting Act, the Town Manager Act. At our last meeting, we talked about a couple of changes to those, which I have made. It got to be so many papers and so many versions, I thought it really wasn't necessarily helpful for me to make yet another copy of these long acts. But I wanted to point out to you that we talked, or maybe I talked at last time, about how we needed to change the lead-in language at the top of the red line versions. So the one for the Town Manager Act, I've changed it to now read, proposed revisions to the Danvers Town Manager Act as recommended by the Danvers Town Meeting Town Manager Acts Review Committee by votes through its May 7th, 2025 meeting. And similarly to the Town Meeting Act, I've now titled the document, Proposed Revisions to the Danvers Town Meeting Act as recommended by the Danvers Town Meeting Town Manager Acts Review Committee by votes through its May 7, 2025 meeting. So that captures everything we did through our last meeting. In the Town Meeting Act, There was also a change agreed to last time, which had to do with the renewal. And I think, Mike, you were the one that suggested this. We were talking about, the language says the act shall be reviewed by the town of Danvers at least once in every 20 years or sooner. And at Mike's suggestion, we changed it to say, or sooner as decided by a majority vote of town meeting members at an annual or special representative town meeting. And it had to do with what was going to be the triggering or the event that would put things in motion, and it would be a majority vote at town meeting. So so that change is now in the Town Meeting Act. The same change in the Town Manager Act, because that review language is the same now in each act. And one additional change in the Town Meeting Act is on page 6 of the red line version. This is in the recall section. And remember, we were talking about how there's the language about the voters themselves individually determine whether the grounds are sufficient. But there was a little hiccup in the way the language read, because it said whether there are any other reasons or something like that. And we've modified it so that it now reads, the voters themselves shall individually determine whether the grounds listed for recall are sufficient. Because the word also or something was in there, it was confusing.
Yeah, I think it was the word other.
Other, that was it, other. Yeah, whether the other grounds listed are, so I took out the word other as voted by the committee. So those are the changes now in what I consider the final red line versions. And the red line versions, in my view, are the ones that should be given to the select board, to the FinCom, and ultimately to town meeting, so they can trace just exactly what the changes are. Is there any question or concern about those couple of changes I just mentioned? We talked about how to spread the word about the work we've done. So I think right now, we're in kind of a waiting mode for the select board to take a look at things and decide where to go next, and then it will go to FinCom. And when that stage happens, one of the ideas, I think it was yours, Natalie, that we could maybe do a DCAT show to talk through the changes and why we're suggesting them. We talked about making sure all town meeting members get a copy of the red line versions in advance of any town meeting or special town meeting that's going to deal with it. And we could, track things and make sure that happens. Any other ideas of how we would spread the word? Too bad Noah's not here. He's our
Just gonna-
PR guy, right? I'll ask him if he has any ideas.
Well, would we have it be made available on the town website?
It will be attached to our minutes of tonight's meeting.
Yeah, so maybe a social media post, their Facebook, to direct people to that area of the website if they were interested in looking at it. Could also be something that's available in the town clerk's office, so a social media post that people want a hard copy they could get. I suppose the town could also promote it maybe through the patch. I mean, get the word out that way.
We Are Danvers, I'm sure Mark.
Right.
Meade Jones would put it on We Are Danvers.
Yeah.
Just be ready for all the.
Well, I know, that's what I'm,
Yeah, I would, yeah.
that's why I'm sitting back.
So once we know what the select board is going to do, or what their conclusion is, I don't know how to do some of that stuff, but maybe we could all powwow at that point to, have ideas in how to accomplish them.
Sure.
I would like to see that we get, like when we get the budget explanation report, before it goes through the select board, before the meeting, that all the town meeting members just get a red line copy there, either way. Because we don't promote everything that goes on at town meetings, like what we're going to be voting on doesn't get promoted everywhere before every town meeting. So I don't know how much we have to spread the word about this, other than to town meeting members. I mean, we're here, we're doing, but I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, before a town meeting, like before this town meeting, I don't know how much is posted on social media about what we're voting on. Is anything?
Yeah, I don't,
Not-
yeah, no.
So I don't know if that's something we should do, shouldn't do, or what?
Well,
But-
I'm just thinking, like, for instance, the select board, they have an agenda, and you can look at it in advance of a meeting and see what's going to be on their agenda, so you have a sense, right?
Right.
And with the finance committee, I know that at least some of the time, when I was on the committee, we tried to project which departments' budgets we were dealing with at any given time, so that if somebody was particularly interested in the police department or particularly interested in the DPW would know, oh, this is the night they're going to be dealing with that budget. I don't know what the current practice is, and I can't even tell you, was that something we always did or just sometimes? But here, if the select board votes, yep, let's send this to special town meeting, then it would come to the FinCom, and it could be the only thing that FinCom is going to deal with. I mean, it could be a special town meeting dealing just with that, though there's always the possibility of like a budget transfer or some other issue. But even if a special town meeting was to have, 2 or 3 or 4 other issues, it'll be clear that they'll be talking about this committee's work. And so, maybe there's a way that we could spread the word to town meeting members, for instance, that this is what FinCom is going to be talking about this night.
Yeah. Well, I assume it would be on their agenda.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Like, it is still broken up like it used to be, where they say we're dealing with the school on this night, and then, so they do still do that.
It was very helpful. Plus, it helps department heads know which, they're informed in advance which nights they need to be here.
Right.
Yeah. So I believe that the pamphlet that lists all of the town meeting members includes for many of them, not all of them, but for many of them, their email addresses. So there would be a chance possibly for us to email everybody. Maybe we could each take a precinct, because we each were basically precinct by precinct, except for John and I, to advise people, this is what's happening on this night before FinCom. It's a possibility.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know if it's even appropriate, to tell you the truth, because I don't remember it happening before.
Right.
Well, I was just going to kind of remind everyone of the kind of limits on our ability to communicate with the whole body and the open meeting requirements.
Yeah,
So
good point.
that's there's other ways to skin the cat, like you said. If I send it to my precinct members, that's not a quorum, so I think that would be appropriate. But we do need to be cognizant of those issues.
That's a good point.
Well, yeah, as long as we didn't encourage conversation about it. This is an informational email. We're sending this out to you just so you know. Yeah, we just have to be worded correctly.
And with emailing out to town meeting, the open meeting law doesn't apply to town meeting. So we could email all 144 at once, although I probably would
yeah.
not recommend that.
I think so,
We,
but breaking it up.
in the Historic Preservation Study Committee, emailed out precinct by precinct, just simply because it was more manageable. And I think we also BCC'd everybody, so there was no reply all. It would just, if they had a question, it came back just to the person who sent it, who could then address their question without it being a an enormous email chain conversation. That might just not be the best way to have a discussion of it.
I hadn't even thought about that. Okay, so let's kind of kick those ideas around, and maybe we'll decide to have a formal meeting, public meeting posted in advance, once we know what the select board's going to do, to decide these kinds of steps, what we should do. We don't have to decide tonight, because we don't know what's going to happen next, right? Which makes me bounce back to this little covering memo that I put together. And I tried to, thank the people who have helped us put things together. But I always feel like I'm forgetting somebody. If anybody has any suggestions. I'm hoping to deliver this to Ann tomorrow, early in the afternoon. I suppose one group to thank is just anybody who attended our meetings, or watched them, or shared their thoughts with us by correspondence or email, or made presentations before us. There's language that I can kind of pull possibly out of our report that will cover that group possibly.
Celia, I mean, it's implicit, I think, in the statement, where you talk about the input generously shared by many, but I don't see any harm with adding kind of the language that's in the report as well, kind of calling out, like, and thanking the various folks who contributed.
True. And I wrote it as a memo to be signed, that's why I put my name at the bottom. Hope that wasn't inappropriate. I was trying to think when I see things, for instance, in the warrant and explanation report, I believe that either the town manager or the head of FinCom often signs those covering letters. I meant to look it up before I left the house tonight, and I didn't.
No, I like it. It makes it look a little more official.
Sally, I'm wondering if there's any value to including the members on the committee,
Yeah.
simply because we all, except for me, we all represent a precinct, and that would show that, that in a sense, the whole town has been represented through all of the.
That's a good point.
And I might just add that, given to that point, that the precinct would probably be next to the person's name, or is that overdoing it? I don't know.
We do have
Well,
that
that's like on the first page of
of the
the,
report, so.
Okay, maybe it is redundant, depending on where this would go versus this one here.
Maybe on the memo,
Yeah.
that you could just add respectfully submitted on behalf of the blah, blah, blah committee. Is that sufficient?
Yeah, because the very next page they would see is the
Would be
first
that.
page of the report that lists everybody by precinct number.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm curious, I'm not sure, John Almeida, when you said about in the front page letter to list specific people, like is in the report, did you?
No,
Oh.
the language in the report that I was thinking of is, if you look at page 2, the second paragraph, the last sentence,
Yeah,
just where it says, "The committee also received the input of several," I mean, it could be modified to talk about, make mention of, officials, citizens, just
Okay.
kind of a.
Not actual
Not-
names?
right.
Oh, okay, all right,
That
good.
wasn't,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think,
yeah.
I think that's necessary.
Plus, then you're going to make sure that,
Yeah, then who do we miss?
exactly.
Does anybody have other stuff that we haven't touched on that you feel we should? I was thinking of changing the report to say we met for almost 40 hours, but now I'm going to have to back down to 39. I mean, we haven't even been at it for an hour tonight, guys.
I feel like
It's really been an interesting process,
Yeah,
hasn't it?
absolutely.
It's fascinating. It's been so wonderful to me to get to know all of you, at least in this way. I'd love to get to know you much more, but I just feel like I've learned so much. You guys are such good wordsmiths. You were able to take a complicated idea and put it in a really straightforward, simple language. It's really been quite a delight. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. It's
Enjoyed it.
It has been very
It's been fun just
interesting.
to discuss it also, just as a big picture thing, to be able to discuss what we think is best for the town, and, yeah, it's been interesting.
And I just want to say before we wrap up, like, how grateful I am that, I mean, I look around and there isn't a person in the committee who hasn't made me stop and think, oh, there's a perspective I hadn't had before. And I've worked on committees where that's not always the case. There's, a couple people who are, wallflowers and don't add. That hasn't been the case here, and I appreciate that. I appreciate everyone on this committee.
People came prepared, ready to ask questions, ready to take on the issues, and interested in making sure we got to resolution. I thought it was good. And everybody was so respectful and kind towards one another. We never had difficult times expressing, even though we expressed, completely different ideas or disagreed with something somebody else said.
Yep.
We found our way through each time.
I think I was saying that to Dan, actually, that I was really proud, and I hope we set an example on how people from different backgrounds, different political views, different upbringings, different everything, can respectfully engage and do the hard work and get things accomplished and still have a lot of laughs, because I think we did. And, yeah, I hope we set an example going forward for the town, for what can happen.
Yeah. If only we had some pizza and beer along the way.
Yes, that would have been even better.
Maybe after, say, a special town meeting. I think we. But you know what? Another thing that I'm really proud of is that, at last year's town meeting, which is the May 20th, I think, they voted to create this, and for this committee to report back to the next annual meeting, which is this Monday. And if we get all of this report together and Ann can get it in the packet for the summer, we will have met that deadline. And there was a time I didn't think we would. Somebody talked about one of the prior committees taking 2 or 3 years to do their review. And I was like, oh my goodness, we really are. We really are in for the long haul.
We're not getting paid enough.
So, I mean, I just think that's really impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, once we kind of settled on a direction that we thought, right?
That really
So,
John kept whipping that.
so once we worked on that, once he convinced us, and we got the
We
right.
got away from the big picture.
We got away from, yes, right? But again, working together towards the common goal of, right? So I think once we got on the right track, we just full steam ahead, so it's good. It's been good.
But we left an opening for a sequel.
Yes.
At the end of our report, that if people want to deal with form of government, it should
That's right.
be
Yep.
a separate committee's work. Yeah.
And lose our number. No. I'm kidding. I'm joking.
No, you're right.
Sally, I just want to thank you for chairing this committee.
Oh,
Being a
yes.
chairperson is a
Amazing.
hard duty that sometimes you may feel like it's so overwhelming, but thank you for leading us and keeping us on
All the
task.
work
and
you've
It
done.
was,
being
to me,
that-
it was an honor, and it came
Yeah.
at a perfect time for me to have time to devote to it, and I've really enjoyed it. You guys made it special. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Jeez. What are we going to do with all our time? We're gonna, like our,
I actually just have a question. So when and if the select board call us, say, yes, come to a meeting to present. I know we kind of talked about it before at last meeting. You know, you as chair would present, we would be there to support, but did you want to break it out into different sections that different folks could speak to, or no?
Well, that's a very good question. We certainly could, and I was thinking that if for any person, there was a particular change that we got in there that you felt, okay, that was your persistence or an issue you really wanted to deal with, you know, it would make sense that you'd be the one to do that. I think the recall provision is going to probably take a couple people talking about it. And maybe we'd even recommend Mike Trainer come to such a meeting, because he's so used to presenting it. But I'm open to suggestion.
My thought is that the singular voice will be more effective. And obviously it would be you, but if there were some issues that you needed a second person to either reinforce, or that you would look to that person to complement whatever you're adding to it. But there's nobody in this room that knows every nook and cranny of this entire thing than you do. And it's hard for me to believe that they would ever ask a question that you haven't got the answer to.
Oh, no, okay. There can be a definite loss of words that, you know, you'll need somebody to like, don't forget this, don't forget.
Kind of one of these.
But, I mean, it's like the minutes from that, my notes from that February 14 meeting. How many times do we talk about what's the next thing that's going to happen? How do we trigger the next action? And I already had it in my notes. I had just forgotten. So you know, I'm old. I have a big,
You're being modest.
no, I'm old. So I think maybe what we should do is save that question till we know that we're going to present. And then maybe I will reach out to everybody to take a poll, should we have a meeting? And then schedule one. I don't want to violate the open meeting law, though, but maybe what I'll do is just call a meeting and people show up as they see fit. Good.
Yeah.
Well, good job, guys. Congratulations.
oh my gosh.
Is there anything else that, I feel like there's more that we should be talking about, but I can't think of what it is. In that case, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Was that you, Natalie?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.